So how do I navigate figuring out how to put a workout together or be able to do a proper strength training program? Great question. So let's jump into that, because I know I've made it pretty clear that strength training is definitely the go-to when you have the choice of type of exercise for pretty much any goal. So how do you put a program together? So I'm going to make this specifically for helping someone who's a beginner, doesn't know where to get started in anything, or potentially maybe you're coming back to working out, or maybe you've never really put a ton of effort into creating an effective program. So this will be useful in that sense. If you're more advanced, some of these things will apply, but majority of this will be very useful for beginners and potentially, again, like people coming back to it or intermediates who never really put too much thought into it. So with that being said, let's break down the starting points of where you would want to be thinking about for a program. Let's use that avatar I used before. So we got Fred sitting in front of me. He's like, okay, help me out. How can I put together a workout plan for myself? Before I go any further, don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you love this, please share it with someone else who you think will be very useful for them as well. So first, you want to figure out how much time do you have throughout each week that you can actually give to working out. A lot of times people, especially if they're gung-ho about getting towards their goals, like I remember getting clients that's like, oh, I can do 5 days a week. Yeah, no, that's probably not ideal for a beginner to jump right into. So you want to think about the amount of days that you can actually give to it. Not necessarily the amount of days you have available, but the amount of days you can actually give to it. Especially when you start out, if you're coming back to it, or if you are brand new to it, you're going to be more sore at the very beginning because your body is not used to this. And if you bite off more than you can chew, there's an easy chance that you're not going to stick with it. Because again, like other things I've talked about, consistency is the biggest key. So you want to have something you can sustain and you can adhere to. Those are the two big pieces to this: sustainability and adherence. So you want to think about the amount of days you're able to do and the amount of time per day that you're capable of doing at this point in your life. That's going to be different at different phases. I'll use myself for example. High school version of me, playing football, being able to strength train for the sport. Hey, I'm a teenager every day of the week. To being with various different work schedules as an adult, from 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 4 days a week, even heck, I've done where it's like doing 15 minutes a day just because I don't have a ton of time. So that's the different variances. You want to think about the amount of days and the amount of time per day. You don't get lost in the thought that all these other people online, they're training, hour or 2 hour workouts. Cool. If they have the time to do that, awesome. But honestly, whatever time you got that you can use. If you got 15 minutes, awesome. 10 minutes a day. Heck, if you could sprinkle 5 minutes 3 times throughout the day, that's 15 total minutes in a day. You got 30 minutes, awesome. Hour, whatever. Whatever you have that you can kind of dedicate to it, you can utilize. I remember I used to work for this company, and it was It was ideal that I learned how to do a lot of sales, like within fitness. That was the good part. But one tactic I remember being taught, looking back, is so not a good idea to use. But a lot of times it's what fitness salespeople are going to do. Heck, even in other industries, they'll use this as a tactic, is the thought of taking, when someone looks at me, I don't have enough time. So the breakdown was, all right, let's look at your whole 24 hours throughout the day. Let's find out where we can fit this in, because you do have the time. And the goal was to find the person, because again, this was selling memberships for group classes, or group training that was for an hour long. So the goal was to find a person at least 2 hours in the week, hopefully 3 hours in the week, that they could give. And the thought was that you would figure it out. The person does have the time, because everybody has the time. They're just not you prioritizing it right. Reality is within fitness, within your health, working out should always be something that you're using to better the quality of your life, improve something in your life. It should not become more of a burden and more of a stressor. So if you're making it more of a burden and more of a stressor, then you got to change the perspective, or potentially you need to lessen, as crazy as it is, lessen the amount of time that you're giving to it. So I would rather a person go, okay, you don't have an hour to spend. Do you have 5 minutes each day? Do you have whatever amount of time? And they could still benefit from it. So you can still benefit no matter the amount of time. There could be an unidealistic world where, and then based on, we're seeing with studies where they show how beneficial strength training can be at a little amount, just to help you maintain and give the healthy benefits of having muscle and everything. Not make you super strong or anything like that, of course, but and so it doesn't take, it may take a decent amount just to build muscle at the beginning, but it doesn't take a lot to maintain that muscle. So at least that's helpful for those coming back to it. Not saying that a beginner has to dedicate way more time. Just understand that my whole point, again, I'm just trying to, I guess, drive home. Use whatever time you do have. Don't force a certain amount. So we got Fred sitting here. Let's say he has, I'm going to give 2 different ways that Fred could answer, just to build this point off. Don't worry, I'll get to reps, sets, and all that stuff here in a little bit. So Fred says, yes, I got 5 days available, and I can do an hour a day. Awesome. So depending on his life, as we talk about how his situation, let's say he's right now working, he's a beginner or coming back to it, he doesn't have any ton of responsibilities. So all right, cool, Fred, 3 days a week. I said, but I have 5. No, 3 days a week is going to be effective enough. Why? Because he's a beginner, or he's coming back to this. Throwing him into the deep end is not going to be very useful, like I said before. Another way is if Fred said, man, I don't really have a lot of time in a day. I could probably squeeze 20 minutes a day. And I don't know, maybe 4 days. Oh, Fred, let's do 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week, and we'll spread the volume of what he would have done in 3 days across 4 days of 15 minutes. So now you got a kind of like an idea of like how you want to look at your amount of time you can sustainably do. Again, that changes, ebbs and flows throughout life. So the next step is figuring out what kind of workout format you want to do or should do. And you got tons of options, right? You got the bro split, you got push-pull legs, you got upper body, lower body, full body workouts, like so many daggone ways that you could do this. How should Fred do this? So again, let's take the two scenarios that I gave you. He has 3 days that he can dedicate for about 45 minutes to an hour. So Fred, we're going to have you train full body 3 days a week so that just in case you miss a day, you still hit everything twice. It's going to be more effective because now he's going to hit, for the most part, everything throughout his whole workout. Versus the other version of Fred, he's got 4 days, 15 minutes a day. We're going to go more of a traditional upper body, lower body type split. So now Fred and we'll look at like what work exercises that should be choiced. So now Fred has this ability to have a shorter workout, knock things out, and has the chance of getting in something each day. So version 1, let's use that as an of the thing here. So we got 3 days a week, full body. The main choices of exercises he should select, because it does matter what exercises you choose. The main exercises he should select are going to be primarily compound movements. Now, what are compound movements? Compound movements are, think of multi-joint or multi-muscle movements. So I'll use an example, the squat. Doesn't matter what squat, just a squat is going to have the ankle go through dorsiflexion, a little bit of plantar flexion, but mainly dorsiflexion of the ankle, or the ability to pull the toes towards the shin. You're also going to have knee flexion and extension, and hip flexion and extension. So that's 3 major joints that are going through motion, tons of muscles that are going to be worked. As an example of a compound movement. Versus the single joint movement, like a bicep curl, that's just my elbow extending and flexing, or bending and straightening. So we're going to prioritize our compound movements. We're going to prioritize them in a specific way so that we choose something that's going to hit primarily each area of the body so that you can cover as much as possible within a shorter amount of time. So the exercise selection here is going to be very similar on the flip on that option 2, where he has 4 days, 15 minutes. It's just going to be less exercises per day. So there's compound movements. We're going to prioritize a squat movement or a knee dominant movement. Next movement that you would really want to focus on outside of a knee dominant movement or a squat movement is a hip dominant movement or a hinging movement. which would be pretty much, think of any form of deadlift would be an example of that. Outside of that, you want to have some form of vertical push and vertical pull. So that would be like, for vertical push, that would be a overhead press, Arnold press, things like that. And then a vertical pull would be like a pull up, a pull down, things, those type of movement patterns. And then you also would need to have a horizontal push and a horizontal pull. So horizontal pull would be any type of row, pretty much. Dumbbell row, barbell row, cable row, machine row. And then the horizontal press is going to be, think of like a barbell bench press, a Smith machine press, a machine press, cable press, dumbbell press, any form of bench, form of like where you're lying flat on the bench, that type of press. So then, outside of that, it would be ideal to include a shoulder abduction movement or a lateral raise. This technically you can make it a scaption in the scaption movement, but with that, you're going to, best bet is to include that as well. Of course, if you had time, you could include like calf raises, bicep curls, tricep movements, things like that. But again, time constraints will depend on those. If you can mainly focus on, like I said, those compound movements and then add a shoulder abduction movement, you're doing pretty good. So we now have Fred's like exercise selection choices for whichever option we're going with for his timing. So again, if he's doing the three full body workouts, he's good even if he missed one. You could always make it a variance of those things throughout the week, so it doesn't have to be the exact same workout Monday, Wednesday, Friday, using that as an example. How it would look if you did it, like again, you could just stick with the same workout, repeat it over and over again, same exercise format, repeat it over and over again with that full body 3 days a week. Or you could take and do a different type of squat those 3 days, is one of the examples, or a different type of deadlift or hinging movement. Because again, you also have to factor in how much fatigue is going to happen. There are certain movements that include more fatigue than others. There's going to be certain ones that are going to just tax the body, in other words, way more. An example of that would be if you performed a conventional deadlift or a sumo deadlift. Argument could be made still, even if you were doing it in a skill format. Granted, as a beginner, you're probably not lifting too much weight, but so much weight anyway, so it won't tax it as much. But as you progress and get stronger, those exercises are more taxing and more fatiguing to the body. They're very beneficial, but fatiguing. So you want to factor that in. So how you would look at it if I'm thinking a hinging movement. Let's take that as an example, a hinging movement. For example, you could come in Monday, perform your conventional or sumo deadlift, whichever one fits your fancy to do. You could always just do both in a week. Well, let's say you have, let's just choose, so conventional deadlift on Monday. Then on Wednesday, you do a reverse hyper. That's another useful exercise as well. You could do on Friday, do an RDL form, whether that's, again, barbell, dumbbell, whichever. So then you have less taxing on the body throughout the week. But then if I use the same thought process for a squat or a knee dominant movement, say if it's low bar squat, the hips are involved as well. Just going to throw that out there for those people who are going to nag me on saying squats are all knee dominant movements. So with that, you could do, for example, so if you got conventional deadlift on Monday, you could do you could either do, let's just say, conventional deadlift on Monday with leg press. So you got a leg press and conventional deadlift. Wednesday, you got your reverse, hyper, and barbell back squat. So that could be high bar, low bar, choose your fancy, front squat. And then on Friday, you have your RDL. So that means with your other movement, squat movement, you could choose like a Bulgarian split squat. And then, of course, that means you're including that single leg movement pattern. So that could be a way of introducing different movement patterns across the 3 different days. And plus, lowering the fatigue ratio. And you kind of go with that throughout all the other different movement patterns, pretty much. So let's jump to what in the world would you choose for the 4 days a week, 15 minutes? Just like, wait, you only got 15 minutes. But depending on, again, rest periods and everything else, there could be some play-in factors. Well, I'm going to simplify and just kind of make some easy choices for you. So you got 15 minutes, you jump in, maybe you got a home gym, you got 15 minutes, you got kind of like the basics in your garage or whatever, or maybe you have a gym at your job or something, you jump in there for 15 minutes. So ideally, like I said, it's going to be a lower body, upper body workout, or reverse it, whichever one. So let's say on Monday, Fred goes in and he could do a lower body focused. So he's going to choose a big compound movement. So he's got barbell, conventional deadlift. I'm going to stick with that same thing so I don't get really confusing. So say he comes in, he does conventional deadlift, and he chooses a second exercise to jump in there. So he's able to do, say again, for simplification, he doesn't have he doesn't have a leg press maybe because he's at his home or he's at a small gym that work or something, so he could just do keep this out of my way and try my glasses and sunglasses here. Rock out some Batman themed sunglasses. I don't know if you see inside, but anyway, hopefully YouTube does not kick me off now that I said the name Batman. So anyway, we let's say Bulgarian split squat with it. So now he has a hip dominant movement, knee dominant movement, and if he has any time, he can throw in maybe a single joint movement, or he can just throw in some like calf raises and stuff like that, or mobility exercise, stretch exercise, whatever. So then on his Tuesday, because he's going to do upper body 15 minutes, he's going to come in and he's going to choose a vertical pull and vertical press, so he does a barbell overhead press, and he has access to doing some, say again, he has a small amount of equipment, so he can do pull-ups. He's got bands, so he can do assisted if he can't, since he's a beginner. So he can put some, do some assisted pull-ups. And then, say again, he has the ability to throw in a third exercise. That's where he adds his dumbbell lateral raise. And then on Wednesday, he comes back, he's like, all right, let's do this. Got leg day again. So he does barbell back squat and some RDLs. And because again, he has a little bit extra time, depending on how many sets he does per thing. You can do some, he can hit some calf raises again. And then his final day, his upper body, last day, he's going to get a horizontal press, horizontal pull. So he's got some barbell bench press or dumbbell bench press. And then he has his dumbbell rows. That's single arm, double arm, whichever, dumbbell rows. And of course, again, he can throw in that third exercise, a single joint exercise, so he hits again lateral raises for a second time. So he can do dumbbell lateral, seated lateral raises this time because his back's a little fatigued. Bam. So now he has an efficient workout, regardless of if it's 3 days a week or 4 days a week with minimal time. So let's jump. So here, exercise selection. Let's jump into sets, reps, rest periods. So sets, you want to keep it basic when you're beginning out. You don't want to get too complicated. And you don't want to go and destroy your body, because again, you can be like, oh, I'm going to do a 5x5. Well, if he's a beginner, it's probably not ideal, because he needs to get acclimated to the movements. The good thing is with beginners, because of getting acclimated, he can lower the amount of sets at the beginning. So starting out, and he's getting back, and he's a beginner. You do 2 sets of everything that he's doing, and because load is going to be based on how he's feeling, based on how how it's going, based on the intensity level. Because he's a beginner, we're going to go and make it basic, 2 sets. And just keep it simple, 2 reps between 10 to 20, so he can get used to it. I give a big range just because, again, he's just getting used to these movement patterns and everything. We're starting around like a mid-range of reps at 10 to a high range of reps at 20. And kind of what I tell people when they ask me, I remember being asked this all the time in the gym. All right, what do I do for reps? Like just people stopping me whether it was after a work training session with somebody, or it was before I trained somebody, I'm on the floor, someone asked me. Normally my response is to give them a range. Of course, I would like to ask them questions, but 9 out of 10 people, they want the quick answer, right? So I'm going to use that. There are questions you can ask, like what level you are. So since this is very specific to beginners, people coming back to training potentially, we're going to specify a little bit more. So since beginning, you're going to acclimate yourself to the movement, build that skill. So I'm going to choose a higher reps because you have more practice. you can better perfect your abilities. Now, we're not looking for perfect reps, we're just trying to get better at feeling the movement, feeling the muscles that you should feel, learning the movement patterns appropriately. So 10 to 20, and then I tend to tell people when I do that is go, okay, you choose the weight. You do two ways. You choose the weight that you can do for 10 reps, and you try to week by week or workout by workout, depending on if you repeat the same exercises. Every time you come back in the next time, you can do one way, which would be go 10 reps and go a certain amount of weight, and the next time try to up it, and the next time up it. And typically, because of beginners or those coming back to training, have that cool part of they call newbie gains. We can just kind of see that progressive strength just happen, like pretty quickly, in perspective of advanced lifters, where it really does slow down. So that would be the thought, is you can do that. Or option 2, take the same weight, go from 10 reps, and next time try to do 12 reps. And then next time do 15 reps. And then next time do 18 reps, 20 reps, etc. And then once you make it to the top of that range with that weight, you would go all the way back down. You start with another weight. Boom. Do the same thing. All the way back up, back down. All the way back up, back down. Beginners, typically, again, you'll be able to see the gains on both ways of doing that. We'll preface that seeing more strength at the same amount of reps typically can happen a little bit quicker than trying to do the same amount of weight for more reps. Not to get lost again, because I don't want to get lost in heavy detail or heavy, like really thinking here. There is of course a mathematical equation to work for finding out the amount of force and load production. But needless to say, it would take more to actually do the same amount of weight and up it to 12 reps than it does to do more weight for 10 reps. So that's just a little piece to that puzzle. So there you go. So that's 2 different ways you do for reps. I said 2 sets. We'll get to progression with other things, but let me back up. We've got one piece to the sets. The goal with progression, because again, this is a way to progress and get more volume, because there's several ways to do more volume, and I'll definitely do another video that talks about volume and different other like terminology to understand. But to increase amount of volume, you could slowly, as a beginner, go from 2 sets to, after a few weeks of doing 2 sets, build up to 3 sets of everything. And that's kind of like the sweet spot for a lot of people, depending on, unless you have certain goals and everything, then you can obviously play around with more sets. I definitely drive through a lot of construction areas for sure. Road work, I mean. All this shaky stuff. So now you got that. Let's talk about rest periods, which is a very interesting conversation. But with this, I want to keep it pretty simple. So the beginning, there's 2 thoughts, not to get convoluted in here, but there's 2 different thoughts of like, does it really matter to track rest periods? And then there's the thought that like rest periods matter a ton. So I'll just explain both ways. Typically for beginners, I would recommend tracking the rest periods, just because you want to kind of learn a time frame and then kind of play around with it. So you can start out with doing, because a lot of times we begin again, you're kind of tracking a little bit more than later on sometimes. So beginners, if you want to take your rest periods and kind of play around with them, typically I would recommend for someone starting out, hasn't been really working out, play between 1 minute and 2 minutes between each set. So now you're knowing why I only said 3 exercises for a 15-minute workout. Again, you potentially could do more at the very beginning and then pull back on the exercises. So you have 1 to 2 minutes, good starting point. There are reasons for doing longer rest periods and shorter rest periods. I remember hearing people complain about, like, man, that guy's in the squat rack, he's wasting so much time, he's resting between his sets, gotta be like 5 minutes. Well, there's a reason to that, hopefully. I say hopefully because if the person's not using it for the right reason, but there is a reason to do 5 minutes. There are times, I remember, weird looks for this, but I remember when I was doing powerlifting prep for a meet, taking a rest period longer than 5 minutes. Because in competition, you want to prepare, just like any other sport, for what you're going to have actually happen on game day. So for powerlifting and meet day. So I remember taking rest periods longer than 5 minutes, because again, between squats and bench, it typically takes them a little bit longer to transition between each person. You got so many people in the lifting group, not to get lost in terms. And so there is reasons to do various different rest periods. There's also reasons to do 30-minute rest periods. I mean, 30-second rest periods. Don't do 30-minute rest periods. That's weird. That'd be a real waste of time. Especially if you only have 30 minutes to train. Got 1 set in. 30-second rest periods. There's a reason for that too. So the thought process of not tracking rest periods, more so further into after you've kind of learned a little bit more of how you do lifting wise. I remember hearing Dr. Mike Isotel talk about this, and this is more so specific to, again, bodybuilding type training, or what we label bodybuilding type training. Physique building type training is where you could get away with kind of just feeling the rest period, and you kind of have a 3-factor piece to this. I actually used this for several clients at a point where you just kind of feel it out based on cardiovascularly, am I recovered before going into the next set? Because again, strength training is not supposed to be that's not the main driver, is to improve the cardiovascular system, unless you're doing some crazy thing like CrossFit. You're also going to factor in, is my primary muscle group that's doing the movement, is that recovered enough to do the next set? Not necessarily completely where you don't feel anything, but recovered enough to where you're like, all right, I can do the next set. Because again, soreness is going to kind of build, especially as you get better and better at, longer and longer at this, do it more, you're going to feel it a lot sooner. So is it recovered enough to where I can do the next set? So let's take, again, let's say bench press. Is my chest, the primary mover, my chest recovered enough to the next set? And then the third one is my secondary muscles, my assisted muscles recovered? So is my, in this sense, for chest, bench press, I mean, is my shoulders and my triceps recovered enough to move into the next one? You don't want to just jump in and go, all right, my chest is ready, and then try to go lock that freaking dumbbell out or barbell out, and you're like, my triceps are dead. So that would be your factor points. And typically it will kind of gauge in the middle of what you've been probably doing because you've built this recovery. So that's why I tend to say learn to do rest periods at the beginning, and then you can potentially play around with what I just said. So that can at least get you started in a starting point of how to build a program for yourself. And of course, if you need more help and you're like, yeah, I'm just lost, I don't know what I'm doing, or maybe you've been doing this and you're like, man, I just keep like falling back into my old patterns, I need someone else to help me develop a program and everything for me. Definitely need some help, or again, check me out. I am on Instagram. You can of course find me there. You can always message us. We can get you started with a program. You can check the link in the bio for a quick start to get started with some training, some online training, and some awesome nutrition help. So definitely give that a look. And until next time, yo.